All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Craig Haney, and I am the Director of Marketing here at Energent. I wanted to thank you very much for taking the time today to learn what other manufacturers have done to reduce their energy consumption and ultimately their carbon footprint. Although the examples today are in the manufacturing and industrial sectors, many of these projects are applicable in all industries, including hospitals and commercial properties. Energy audits, equipment upgrades, and monitoring reporting are applicable for all buildings in all industries. Today's webinar will provide examples of successful and sustainable energy conservation initiatives, and will show you how they were implemented and the results that came from these projects. We will also discuss definitions of energy conservation and sustainability and how companies are currently reporting on their sustainability initiatives and their results. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Questions tab to the right of your screen and type your questions. We will save some time at the end of the presentation to answer as many of the questions as possible. The presentation will take about 30 minutes, and we'll leave 15 minutes for questions that people may have asked throughout the webinar. The webinar will also be recorded and posted on the Energent website, so if you want to refer to this webinar at a later time, you are certainly able to. As well, you're able to forward the link on to any colleagues or friends that may have been interested in today's webinar, but were unable to attend. With that, let's begin. So Energent is based out of Waterloo, Ontario, and we are a team of energy experts that provide energy management software and services, including monitoring and targeting and measurement and verification software for industrial, commercial, and institutional clients. Our software is hosted in the cloud, providing faster installs and lower costs as compared to larger enterprise systems. We offer a software and a service model. That's class-leading energy management software and a team of energy analysts to support our clients to act on energy savings opportunities. We monitor real-time energy consumption and compare this to mathematical models to highlight savings opportunities. We've been working with industrial clients for over 10 years, supporting various energy efficiency projects that have led to SciPec awards and millions of dollars and kilowatt hours and meters cubed of energy saved. Today's webinar will start with an overview of what energy conservation and sustainability is. How do we define each of these vague terms and some high-level ways to achieve each of these goals? The other important corporate aspect of energy conservation and sustainability is to properly report achievements that have been made and benchmarking metrics internally and externally. From there, we will review 3 specific case studies where different organizations have had some level of a success in implementing these energy conservation initiatives. We will spend a little time trying to understand why they were successful and discuss the implications of the results. As always, we will summarize the important learning opportunities in today's webinar and close with 15 minutes to answer your great questions with hopefully equally great responses. So let's start by defining energy conservation and sustainability in the context of reducing the impact of manufacturing processes. For the industrial and manufacturing sector, energy conservation can be broken down into 3 primary initiatives to reduce energy consumption during their day-to-day production schedules. There may be lots of arguments to include other aspects of production, but for argument's sake today, we can include these 3: using less material, using less energy, and shipping the project more efficiently. Sometimes 2 or 3 of these happen synergistically, providing a larger impact. For example, Canadian Tire recently reduced the amount of plastic content in one of their most popular 8-foot pop-up tables by a whopping 18%. The consequence of this was less material was used to create one table, of course, but maybe surprisingly, they were able to ship 20% more tables in each container or truckload because the tables were not as thick, reducing their shipping carbon footprint, not to mention their cost. Now let's take a closer look into each one of these energy conservation initiatives in a bit more detail. By using less material, manufacturers are clearly reducing the impact on their environment. Nestle Waters has responded to criticisms about their environmental and energy impact by reducing their plastic content in their bottles by 15%. Frito-Lay, a PepsiCo company, has the goal of not only recycling their cardboard boxes, but reusing them 7 times prior to recycling them. This can have a significant impact on the energy consumption, as the process of recycling cardboard can use a significant amount of energy. Using less energy means taking advantage of more energy-efficient equipment at your facility, upgrading and replacing old and inefficient equipment. We can also improve the operational procedures of your facility and significantly reduce the energy used to heat or to cool the building. Finally, the way you ship and the distance your product has to travel all have significant impact into the energy conservation that goes into your product. Are there ways that shipping routes can be more efficient? Maybe take less trips? Maybe use a different type of vehicle? More products per shipment, or join with another company to share shipping costs? There are always ways to make your product more energy efficient. Not all of these will apply to every manufacturer. But the more energy conservations you can employ in your company, the opportunity to boost profits and lower your environmental impact are increased. Next, to help us define sustainability, let's look at the components of a corporate sustainability program. The overarching concept is that every sustainability program has to have the ability to monitor and report targets and achievements. Without the ability to reliably measure and report sustainability targets, stakeholders cannot have the confidence in the reporting that is being evaluated. Once we have the reliable ways of measuring and reporting, we can look at some initiatives that have a positive effect on a corporate sustainability initiative. Managing and measuring waste is a relatively easy way to begin. Most companies will have some way of measuring the waste that leaves the facility, so monitoring this, comparing this to some relative metrics such as production throughput, and investigating ways to reduce that waste through operations and capital projects. Investigating the total life cycle of the project is a large project for any company to undertake. But for those that are committed to sustainability and increasing their accountability and the accountability to all suppliers, it is an integral step to take. Product lifecycle management integrates people, data, processes, and business systems and provides a product information backbone for companies and suppliers. When companies include the energy consumption and carbon footprint of each step of their process, it provides metrics to measure against and report on, and ultimately improve on, for their comprehensive sustainability initiative. In many cases, increasing the recycling of waste materials is a cost-effective way of reducing waste. The other way to affect recycling is to increase the amount of recycling components into the products that are created. There are many examples of industries that have been successful in this initiative, and the two most common ones are the paper and pulp industry and the asphalt industry. Finally, the goal of any sustainability plan put forth by the company is to reduce its impact on the environment through more sustainable practices. One of the best corporate sustainability models I have heard from comes from the clothing manufacturer Patagonia. Their mission statement is, build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, and use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. It is very clear with that mission statement that sustainability is core to their company's culture, and reducing the impact on the environment is as important as any other aspect of their business, including sales, product development, and profit. About 15 years ago, the United Nations released a document titled Indicators of Sustainable Development, Progress from Theory to Practice. In the document, they highlight the value and necessity of having information available at that moment in time to report to stakeholders as well as to make necessary adjustments to ensure sustainable development. Here's a brief excerpt from that document. To move to sustainable development, decision makers need information. They need information about where they are in the moment in time, or real-time information on developing trends and pressure points, information about the impacts or effects of interventions or policies that are put in place. They need feedback on which adjustments to make to speed up or slow down the effects of their interventions. They need information about milestones achieved or about failures that frustrate progress. That was 15 years ago. We haven't moved as much as we would like to have or expected to in the past decade and a half, but we have moved some. And obviously some companies have moved farther than others. The important aspect here is that we want to point out is that sustainability needs timely information to be relevant to leadership and to stakeholders. Sustainability reports are the most common way of sharing this information that most people care about. Many companies that are committed to tracking their sustainability goals choose to publish an annual sustainability report. There are not nearly as many regulations, or any at all, on the creation of a sustainability report for public consumption as compared to other reports. The goal of the sustainability report is to make public the goals and achievements and challenges of the corporate sustainability plan. Printing this report and making it public creates a much greater sense of accountability within the organization. Most sustainability reports follow a similar path. First, they summarize the initiatives that have been undertaken in previous years and the measurable achievements that were gained during that timeline. The next section often highlights the goals of the new time period and the execution plan to achieve these goals, say over the next year. Finally, corporations will often point out any potential obstacles to achieving their targets for the following year. Ultimately, the sustainability report should point out how the company plans to achieve sustainable development and acts as an accountability tool to allow stakeholders to ensure the company meets the objectives stated in this report. Sustainability reports are great and provide a good tool for corporations to report their achievements, but what happens day to day to lower a company's carbon footprint and make it more sustainable? That's why we're here today. Let's look at some of these examples of how companies are making small changes to operations and capital projects that make substantial conservation and sustainability gains. I understand that there's a lot more to sustainability than just energy, but energy conservation initiatives are relatively easy to measure and provide a great basis for a corporate sustainability initiative. So I will spend the rest of the webinar looking at 3 specific case studies done on projects that have been successful in reducing energy costs throughout both operational changes and strategic capital upgrades. We will start with a Cambridge, Ontario company, Veriform, and then we will look at a Quebec pulp and paper mill that they used an energy audit to reduce their costs on a compressed air system. And finally, a Stratford, Ontario company who invested in metering and an energy management information system to save $250,000 annually. Let's start with Veriform and a compressor case study which they provided for us. Veriform is a custom metal fabrication company based out of Cambridge, Ontario. Veriform's owner, Paul Rack, has invested hundreds of thousands of dollars on energy conservation projects and ultimately has lowered their energy consumption by well over 60% in the past 5 years. Here is a specific case study that found significant results through a compressor upgrade. The compressor you see on the screen is a 20 horsepower screw compressor used to supply compressed air for the facility. Typically, this compressor is switched on at 8 a.m. when the team arrive for work that day and is turned off at the end of the day. The conventional thought is that since it's used regularly throughout the day, it just makes sense to keep the compressor running full time all day. When the measurements were completed on the operations of the compressor, the energy data showed that the baseload demand was almost equivalent to the operating demand, making it a pretty expensive piece of equipment to be running all the time. So the big question is, do we have to turn it on at 8 a.m. and turn it off at 5 to meet the production needs of the plant? Let's find out. This slide shows the 20 horsepower compressor runs at approximately 14 kilowatts when running idle, and then 18 kilowatts when in demand. Certainly doesn't seem to be efficient when it's running at 75%, even when it isn't in operation. There was a decision made to upgrade to a new compressor and reduce the horsepower capacity of that new compressor. So let's take a look at how this newer, more efficient compressor operates. When investigating the new compressor, it was found that the newer models were much more efficient, and a 10 horsepower compressor would meet the compressed air requirements of the facility. Assuming that a 50% drop in horsepower would equate to a 50% drop in electricity demand, the savings are pretty dramatic. But what if we could do more? What operational changes could Veriform do to reduce the electricity demand and consumption on this important piece of equipment? Because the horsepower of the compressor is half of the older one, we could expect to see a 50% drop in electricity demand. When we add the variable speed and flexibility to the new compressor, it allows the compressor to be turned off almost completely and draw very little power when the unit's not in use, and only draw power when it's in operation. So, what does this mean for savings? What does the electricity load profile look for a new 10 horsepower motor as compared to the older 20 horsepower one? So, as you can see, this profile looks very different from the electricity demand profile of the 20 horsepower motor. The profile on the left is the new compressor, and the profile on the right is the old compressor. Here, let's take a closer look at the 10 horsepower motor electricity demand profile. The obvious difference we can see here are the spikes in demand versus the flatter profile that we saw in the older compressor. As you can see, there are small increases in demand as the compressor starts up, but very quickly comes back to an operating level, which is only about 50% of the initial demand, or from 8 kilowatts to 4 kilowatts. It operates approximately twice an hour to ensure that the operations have the required compressed air, but when they're not in operation, the compressor essentially runs idle. Certainly looks like a dramatic distance. Now let's switch from kilowatts to kilowatt hours to see what impact it has on electricity costs of Variform. Now here are the dramatic results of the cost of electricity based on kilowatt hours of consumption. The 20 horsepower motor was consuming approximately 10.5 kilowatt hours of electricity each hour, where the 10 horsepower motor was operating at a very economical 0.66 kilowatt hours. This represents a 93.7% decrease in electricity consumption with absolutely no change in operations. I don't have the figures on the capital upgrade cost of the compressor to look at a total return on investment. But when you can reduce the operating cost of any capital equipment by almost 95%, I believe it's safe to say that the return on investment will be pretty darn attractive. This case study does not mean that we want you to go out and purchase a new compressor, but you will see in the next case study, when upgrades are necessary, perform the necessary research and look into which equipment will use the lowest level of energy while still allow you to operate at the necessary level. Historically, many industrial customers have overbought for capacity, assuming production levels will always rise and have them left running throughout the operating day just in case they were needed. There is a new paradigm that can be applied here. The old way isn't always the best way, and using a combination of newer equipment and better operating procedures can save manufacturing facilities thousands of dollars, which go directly to your bottom line. So let's move to the next case study, which was written by Natural Resources Canada. Kruger is a cardboard producer whose facilities in Quebec, Ontario, British Columbia, Newfoundland and Labrador, and in the United States. This case study is produced from a project done at their LaSalle facility in Quebec. This plant produces over 110 million square feet of cardboard annually. And for those that are familiar with the pulp and paper industry, it's a big consumer of electricity. Many of these pulp and paper facilities will have huge grinders that will run at many thousand horsepower and will use either natural gas or alternative fuels for various processes within the facility. Any way you look at it, this one facility spends approximately $1 million of energy each year and was growing rapidly. Kruger wanted to understand why their energy spend was growing at a disproportionate rate to their production, and if there were low costs and high return investments they could do to improve their energy efficiency. The first place that the leadership at Kruger turned to was an energy auditing firm to conduct an assessment of their facility. When Energen engages early on with an industrial customer, we often investigate whether an energy audit has been completed in the facility within the past couple of years. Energy audits have had a bad reputation as an expensive report that just sits on the shelf after the audit was completed. Energy audits often have a lot of valuable information contained with them, but are often not acted upon because there aren't financial or personnel resources to execute on the projects outlined in the audit. For this audit, it was identified that Kruger's LaSalle plant uses compressed air to operate its production equipment. It used 2 compressors to operate the compressed air system, 150 and 200 horsepower each. It was estimated that it cost the company over $150,000 annually to operate these compressors, including the electricity and the water that was used to cool the compressors. The audit found a very high rate of leaks. Approximately 45% of the compressed air was lost. Losing almost half of the compressed air from the system meant that the compressors obviously had to run for longer periods of time, therefore increasing their electricity consumption. It was costing Kruger approximately $150 per meters cubed per hour, which is over double what the standard cost of operating a screw compressor, which is about $65. Outside of the increased cost, the system was losing so much air that it was actually difficult to maintain enough pressure for regular operations. It was also identified that the compressors were operating below the recommended 70% of rated volume and had been in operation for many years. So it was decided to investigate the cost of a new compressor versus repairing the old ones. The plant's compressed air system was in need of replacement with a single, variable speed, air-cooled 150 horsepower compressor, which replaced these single-speed 150-200 horsepower compressors that were operating prior to the audit. The audit also found that there were air leaks throughout the plant, when the largest leaks in the roller conveyors. The plant staff worked to correct the losses, and the demand for the compressed air dropped by a whopping 40% just through these operational improvements. The variable speed compressors adjust the speed of the drive motor so that the production of the compressed air matches the demand placed on the system, significantly reducing energy costs. And because of the improved performance of the new compressor, combined with the elimination of many of the leaks, the new single compressor was able to meet the needs of the facility at a much lower horsepower. The installation of the new compressor unit was managed through a subcontractor and plant engineering staff. The key point here is that they ran a parallel system during the installation, and testing was there to ensure there was no downtime at the facility. Kruger was also able to secure $67,000 of financial assistance from Hydro-Quebec for the purchase and installation of this new system. It's important to remember that utilities, whether it's natural gas or electricity, are incentivized to help their customers implement successful conservation programs and capital projects. If you are contemplating capital upgrades, and I know many of you are, please work with your local utility to see if there are funds available to support your project. If you have any questions about these incentives, please follow up with me after the webinar and we can investigate these opportunities together. So, the results of the project were quite dramatic. A 25% reduction in overall electricity consumption, a drop in the operating cost of the compressed air system by 42%. By installing an air-cooled compressor, there was a 38,000 meter cubed of water consumption savings, and because the new system was better able to meet the compressed air needs of the facility, production output was increased as the new system eliminated the frequent drops in network pressure that was present in the old system. Finally, when all the costs were added up and the incentives were included, the return on investment of this $170,000 compressor system was only 20 months. These examples showcase how a combination of operational improvements and capital upgrades can create an energy efficiency project that has a short payback period and significant gains in operational efficiency that positively impact all aspects of the production. Finally, this case study comes from a client of ours in Stratford, Ontario. The project was completed in 2009 and was published by Union Gas in 2010. The situation began when Gates had to make the difficult decision to move from a 7-day production schedule to a 5-day production schedule to help lower costs. A portion of their furnace was kept idling at full temperature during the weekends as they are difficult to restart and bring up to full temperature after being shut down. The question that they needed to be answered was, could the natural gas savings of a full furnace shutdown make that worthwhile? Although there are many other pressing operational issues to improve the overall efficiency of plant operations, this was the first question that needed to be answered to build confidence in the system and achieve real savings quickly. The monthly natural gas bill did not provide enough visibility to accurately and confidently state that there was a strong business case to shut down the furnaces over the weekend. To ensure that all levels of the organization bought into the program, a project approach was developed by a steering committee containing people from all three organizations, Gates, Union Gas, and Energent. Step one in the process was to conduct an energy audit to provide Gates with a few key pieces of information to ensure success in the project and identification of the key opportunities. First, it would provide accurate natural gas consumption in 5-minute intervals at each metering point, in this case the furnaces. This gave them the increased consumption visibility they needed to make good decisions. Secondly, it gave Union Gas the information they needed to choose the locations of 13 additional submeters in the plant. These submeters were put in place to compare consumption of each of the furnaces as well as other areas that were key to overall operational excellence. Once all the submeters were installed, Energent began to research energy drivers and the impact that they had on energy consumption. The next step in the process was to install Energent's real-time energy management platform. This system, our system, would provide them with key pieces of information to ensure success in the project for the long term. Using this increased visibility and data resolution, Energent was able to create 4 different energy models that provided target values for energy use that is adjusted to by these key energy drivers. Once everything was installed and monitored, Energent began measuring energy consumption in 5-minute intervals, comparing these values to the 4 models that have been created in real time, and providing plant personnel immediate feedback as to whether energy consumption was above or below expected values. It also provided an opportunity for operators to experiment with different equipment and operating practices so they got the very best energy performance. Plant operations were now also able to adjust furnace settings and see the impact almost immediately, improve the sequencing of compressor units to match demand instead of just ease of operation. They were also able to build a business case ahead of any major purchases, providing them an estimated return on investment for all capital projects, giving management the information they need to confidently present any opportunities to the executive team. Priority scheduling was created to utilize the most efficient equipment first and to look only to use the less efficient equipment when necessary. Finally, a green team was developed out of this that now created many more sets of eyes and ears to identify opportunity for energy savings, ultimately creating this culture of conservation. Having Energent's platform in place provided the opportunity for operators to maintain performance improvements through regular monitoring and reporting. Ultimately, all of these changes were about improving the bottom line of the organization, ensuring that these investments reflected an increase in profits through lower costs. So what were the results? Did they improve the bottom line of the company? Let's see here. Electricity was reduced by 12.3%. Natural gas was reduced by 8.2%. And it added up to a return on investment of 150%. This resulted in a payback of less than 8 months, and overall it provided $20,000 a month in savings, or $240,000 annually. These were real savings that the executive team and the operations team understood, and it didn't affect any of the throughput of the plant at all. So, to summarize today's presentation, we started by reviewing some of the key pillars of energy conservation. For industrial and manufacturing customers, there are 3 pillars of energy conservation. Use less materials in the manufacturing process, packaging, and waste less of it. Use less energy for the manufacturing process, equipment, and for administration. Ship the product more efficiently using shorter routes and more efficient modes. When we talked about sustainability, we put forth 5 components of sustainability. These are certainly not a comprehensive list, and every company, depending on their business and their products, could have many more components to their sustainability plan. But these 5 seem to support the most industrial programs. Report targets and achievements. Measure, manage, and reduce waste. Work hard to understand the impact of your product life cycle. Increase plant recycling initiatives and recycle content in your products if possible. Ultimately, any sustainability program should have the ultimate goal of reducing the impact that your product and processes have on the environment. For the reporting of sustainability initiatives, ensure that any reporting that is done is measurable, transparent, and puts forth an action plan for achieving the next set of goals. This way, your stakeholders, which could be employees, suppliers, customers, and shareholders, can support your achievements and their goals, making them easier to meet. For the case studies we reviewed, we looked at 3 Canadian case studies that looked at different aspects of energy conservation. For the Veriform case study, we saw that simple changes can equal big results, to always be looking for opportunities to reduce costs and your impact on the environment. And I wanted to thank Veriform for sharing that case study today. In our second case study, we reviewed Kruger's LaSalle plant in Quebec that needed to upgrade their compressed air system to improve product and lower costs. Through an energy audit, they found that it was made more business sense to upgrade to a newer, more efficient compressed air system than it did to fix the old one. As well, they were able to save $60,000 alone on just fixing those air leaks within their building with good old-fashioned employee engagement. Finally, in the third case study, we saw that Gates saved $20,000 a month by studying their operations and understanding that changing their furnace startup and shutdown processes would save them $250,000 annually. As well, engaging employees in the program created this culture of conservation through the development of a green team. So here's a quick slide on a small cross-section of our industrial client base that has been using Energent's software platform and energy analyst services to lower their costs, improve visibility, and ultimately better manage their energy budget. Energent is the first choice when it comes to an energy management information system for the industrial and manufacturing sectors. So we have a new slate of webinars that will be starting in September. So keep watching on the Energent homepage, our Facebook page, our Twitter feed, as well as our blog to keep up to date on all the latest webinars and information. We will be doing a benchmarking webinar next week on Thursday, August 23rd at 2 p.m., which is more targeted at the healthcare and municipal sectors, but still could provide valuable information for those that are not in the industry. Our first webinar in September will be on Thursday, September 20th at 2 p.m., and it will be all about how to turn all of this energy data we have into knowledge and ultimately use that knowledge to identify these opportunities for savings. So I wanted to thank you for taking the time today to attend today's webinar. We hope it inspired some of you to look at the processes and your equipment and see if there are ways you can reduce your energy costs. Also, if you have a story to tell, please follow up with me after the webinar using the information that you have on the screen and let me know about it. I would love to be able to share that story with some of our other regular webinar attendees. So it looks like we have a number of questions here, and I want to make sure that I take the time to answer them. So if you haven't asked a question yet, please let me know and put it on the question chart, and I will get to the questions that are there. Okay, so question 1. It says it's not safe to say so. Need to take into account the lifetime costs. So I'm not quite sure if that with respect on the first case study. So yeah, so we're looking at the total lifetime cost of the of the air compressor system, and so I think the question is that we need to account the lifetime cost of the compressor to look at the energy savings or the return on investment. So the numbers that we were looking at from the case study was sort of a day-to-day account of looking at the kilowatt hours that were used for one day on the old system and comparing that to one day on the new compressor system. So I understand there are different there prices and costs that are associated with that, and that's put that caveat at the end saying I understand that there are other costs that were not accounted for, so I can't give you a return on investment. But what we were able to measure was that there was a significant reduction in the energy use of that compressor system when we were doing it. So so that's how we take a look at that. So it's true that we're not safe to say that energy savings alone will justify the investment. I absolutely understand that. There are lots of components to that, but for us as being sort of the energy management experts, and that's what we do is measure energy. That's how we were looking at it, just at the energy savings. So you're right. There's lots of other costs associated with that, and that has to be built in the business plan. But often the case, energy isn't as big of a consideration as it needs to be. And with all this the information that we have, we can certainly dictate exactly what the energy savings are. So on the third case study, we're talking about how much the submetering installation costs for this site, and was there financial support by the gas utility. So absolutely, the Union Gas did support significantly on the those 13 submeters. I don't have the cost specific of that, but it was supported by the gas utilities. Many of these projects are going to be supported by your utilities, and especially on the electricity side right now, if there are ways to look at reducing your demand of electricity, not necessarily consumption, but demand, there is a lot of money available for programs like that. For example, the Ontario Power Authority has a program that if you reduce your demand, they will pay you $800 per kilowatt of demand savings, of measured demand savings. So if you can put something in there that will save you 10 kilowatts of demand, that's $8,000 back into your pocket from the OPA. So talk to your local utility. More specific information, you can also follow up with me offline, and we can talk about all the different incentives that both gas and electricity have. So I don't have the specific information on this submetering cost, but it was supported by the gas utility. Next question. Outside of compressed air and lighting, what other types of manufacturing retrofit projects have yielded success in energy and cost savings results? Well, certainly compressed air is one of the big costs because of the cost of compressors and lighting has been some of the most popular. But you can look at insulation as a way of reducing heating costs. You can look at recycling air and recovering heat recovery systems to help with heating. Very simple ones, which Veriform has used in the past as well, is managing the bay doors, making sure that they're not opening and closing or staying open all the time, and having to either heat or cool that place. So there are simple systems that you can put in place that can yield significant savings. So I think one of the ways that we want to look at that is using some information. So that's a combination of the energy audit as well as an energy management system to really identify those opportunity costs. And they're not necessarily all capital projects. Some of them are simply loading some production onto more efficient equipment, and by either submetering or understanding the energy cost of the products or the equipment that you're using, you can see how energy efficiency gains can be made by just shifting production to different equipment if that's possible. So what techniques do you use to motivate apathetic manufacturers? Do we do free monitoring assessments? Certainly we engage with clients early on and do these what we would call sort of review their historical data and look for opportunities as part of our engagement process. But ultimately, as with any, it doesn't matter whether it's a manufacturer or a commercial building or anything else. If you don't have a customer, or if you don't have someone that's engaged in energy management, if it doesn't matter to them, then they're not going to put the necessary resources in place, and that could be financial or that could be personnel resources. So that we have to you have to try to motivate these manufacturing clients or anyone to really get engaged in it. And sometimes what that takes is information. Show them what opportunities there are and how easy it is to save a significant amount of money through operational changes or capital retrofits. And it certainly would, has in the past, certainly got the fire under their belly. So, okay, so the question here about sustainability analysis here, which utility support programs will support energy and waste, water and raw materials and transportation? So utilities right now are really focused on, in the manufacturing sector, really talking more about the processes and both operational wise and on the capital CapEx side. So there aren't a lot of programs that are talking about waste, but if certain segments are. So we do a lot of work in the hospital sector. So the Ontario Hospital Association includes hospital waste as one of the key pillars of their sustainability initiative for all hospitals. So waste is an important component of that. But as for utilities that are supporting that, all of the programs that we've seen and that we're focused on, because once again we are the energy management side and we focused on those consumption and the processes, we see them very much talking about improving the processes for electricity and gas reduction, and then looking at large capital upgrades as well. So I'm sorry I can't say that which utilities are supporting the transportation stuff, but I think once again going back to the idea that information can provide you a lot of value, understanding what components in a total product life cycle can really help you understand what the cost components are, and the more you understand, the better decisions that you can make. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. Last one here is what do we sell? Analysis and monitoring or savings from retrofits. So this is a great opportunity to tell you what we do. So Energent is a monitoring energy management company. So we monitor, we report, we do monitoring and targeting, we do measurement and verification. So we are a software company, but we also have a team of engineers on site that work with our clients to help them understand how to take advantage of the information and the data that we collect. So we really help understand what's coming through the processes, how to understand what energy contribution is on products, on any of the manufacturing processes that you do, and then look for ways to help reduce that. So we don't get paid on the actual reductions. We really are an engagement. We really want to try to be part of your energy management team and really help you understand how you can take a look at energy management as a more comprehensive view of your processes, and hopefully just lower that cost, increase your sustainability, lower your energy costs, improving profits, and ultimately lower carbon footprint. So, is there any other questions? We've had a slew of really great questions. Who carries the risk of not reaching savings you identify? So there is. So that would be with respect to say a risk. What it is in an energy management plan, opportunities are identified and potential savings are identified, and then what ends up happening is Energent works with our customers to help reach those goals. We don't commit to any of those savings, but what we do is we give information that will validate that those savings are identified, and here are some opportunities to how to get there. So with respect to, it's not an ESCO if you're familiar with energy service contracts, which guarantee savings and are paid on that process. That's not our business. We can help verify those types of programs to ensure they do reach that. But ultimately, the way we work is really as a collaboration with our clients to give them data and help them walk through that data to identify those opportunities and then quantify the savings that come out of that. And maybe they're more, maybe they're less than what was identified either in our work or in an energy audit. But ultimately, there's no risk in that we're not committing to anything on that, and it really is about engagement on the customer side as well as our side to help collaboratively reach those goals. So once again, thank you. Great questions. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the webinar today. It will be posted on our website later on today or tomorrow, and feel free to send that off to any one of your colleagues. And our next webinar will be this Thursday, a week today, on hospital benchmarking. So thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you all next week.